Hey there, Star Wars world. Welcome to our interview with Dominic Pace today. We're really excited. My name is Amy Higgs, and I am the detachment leader for the Bounty Hunters Guild of the 501st Legion.
And I am Jesse Pollock. I am the Legion Executive Officer for the 501st Legion. Really excited to be here and really excited to talk to our good friend Dominic.
Yep, and Dominic has been very kind in giving us some time today. We're celebrating with 1138 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm, and we're raising money for First Robotics. They've kind of teamed up together, and it's amazing charity. The link to it is posted for everybody if you want to check it out. But really great. Thank you so much for joining us. And Dominic, thank you for joining us as well and your busy schedule. You just told us you returned from Alaska, so a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, hello to all the 501st. Appreciate everyone's support. And thanks to everyone for tuning in for obviously such a great cause. Yeah, just came back from Alaska. As many know, we had such a successful campaign last year in terms of helping small business, as well as working with all the charitable organizations on anything that you guys needed for your local communities. It became such an addiction in terms of doing good. And at the same time, as I'm sure many of the cosplayers and members know how much pride you take within your own character, that I wanted to do a second tour this year. The small businesses have been incredibly supportive as far east as even England before COVID started, as well as Hilo, Hawaii, which I came back from about a month ago. And I've been hitting some of the remote areas before the major tour, which is going to be a 2.5-month span over 35 states. We managed to raise, again, $25,000 for small business last year, and really excited to venture on this year and support the brand, as well as do as much good as we can within our communities.
That's awesome. Well, so let's start with your first question.
Yes.
You recently became a member of the Star Wars family as the bounty hunter named Gecko. Before we get to him, tell us a little bit about your fans across the country, and maybe something that they haven't been able to learn about you in the last couple years.
Sure. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar that I'm actually a genuine collector. I collect the vintage 96 original. It's funny because I'm at sort of a standstill right now at the last two, which are the Loose Stormtrooper, as well as EV-99. And I keep going back to Kylo Ren's line from episode 7 of I'm not sure if I have the strength to do it as far as ordering these pieces, because they're like $400 to $600,
Oh my goodness.
Any guy or any girl who's married, especially the passionate collectors, when you get up to $400, $600, $1,000, it ends up becoming a little bit more of a pause on hitting that eBay purchase. But a diehard collector, Entertainment Tonight, at the beginning of my career, I did this cheesy film with Miramax Films in Singapore called That's the Way I Like It. And my publicist, he said, look, I know you're a diehard Star Wars fan. I don't know if anybody's going to see this movie, but we'd love to have them interview you, Entertainment Tonight, on your collection. So right before episode 1, when I had nothing to do with Star Wars directly at all, They came into my closet and interviewed me. At the time, I had a life-size Harrison Ford and Han Solo in carbonite, and collect some of the icon pieces as well. So that might be some information that other people don't know. The other thing I wanted to add was, there's many reasons as to why this tour is going on. The other thing is I have two sons that are 12 and 15. And, I'm the son of an Italian immigrant. And the most important lesson, Filoni, before the Clone Wars, before Rebels, I think even Bad Batch now, he gives those little proverbs, and the one thing for me is to teach my sons that no matter how small the opportunity, great things can happen from that. So I'm not sure if all of the audience or the fans and friends are familiar with that part of the campaign, but genuinely, it really is about teaching my sons as well to go out there and get it. Not everything is going to be handed to us in life. And we have to go out there and not only pursue our own dreams as Americans, but at the same time, if we can help others along the way, that's what we're going to do.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely.
Dominic, Gecko was seen in season 1 of The Mandalorian. Can you share with us how you became him, or how you got into the character, and also how you landed that role?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I'm a blue collar actor. So what that means, and my definition of it is, I'm from New York. And, ever since I was 18 years old, I left college after 1 year. And I took every job. I promised to my mother, I said, I'm not going to be sitting at home. I mean, let's be politically correct, smoking weed and playing PlayStation. I said, I want to pursue this business. But in part of pursuing this business, and the character is to this day, I take every single job. My agents and my managers, sometimes they get upset. If you're, say, a CO in the 501st, but then you transfer down to Alabama and maybe you're not an XO or CO, you may have so much pride within the 501st. You say, you know what, I still just want to be a part of the team. Well, it's the same thing with me as an actor. I say, I'm just happy to be on set. But also at the same time, in terms of the work ethic, from waiting tables, driving Uber, working for moving companies, whatever I have to do in order to survive, in order to keep my schedule free. I've been very fortunate as an actor, almost over 100 television and film credits, but I attribute that to the in between those lines, and that's taking the odd jobs. Part of the odd jobs is sometimes second team work. When in 2002, I had the privilege of working with Legacy Effects, who worked on The Mandalorian, and I doubled and I stood in for Frankenstein opposite Hugh Jackman, and now a dear friend, Will Kemp, who played Wolfman. The talent of prosthetics isn't exactly the greatest talent in the world, but at the same time, you need to be patient, you need to be professional, and also they do appreciate people who obviously have been on set, they understand blocking, they understand the routine, etc. I did this throughout my career, in between all the guest stars, even recurring roles on NBC. If you look me up on IMDb, I've been very fortunate. But at the same time, I love the business. Just like you guys love charity and you love giving and love being part of the Star Wars community. For me, it's like whatever you need me to do, I'm happy to do. And again, it's a very humbling angle in terms of just making sure I'm supporting my family. We're not sitting back telling my wife, or my kids, hey, you know what, there's no work this week. Yes, there is. You can get out there, do whatever it is that you have to do in order to get by. This was a second team makeup test. And I just happened to meet Brian Sipe, who was the head of his makeup department, as well as part of Legacy Effects. And he headed up Drax. He has done extensive work. If you look up his resume, he was also nominated for an Emmy for makeup for The Mandalorian. And it was a 6-hour makeup test. I had a previous experience also on Bright with Will Smith, as well as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they split my face in two with just different prosthetics as well as makeup. No mention of Star Wars at all, no mention of being a diehard fan. I just figured it was going to be a spinoff of another Marvel show for perhaps Amazon, Netflix, what have you. 2 weeks later, I ended up getting a call, and I get called in, and I see the Lucasfilm contract, and that's when my hands started shaking a little bit, because for a second, I said, oh, maybe it's Willow, maybe we're going to do Indiana Jones Part 8, or what have you. But little by little, when I started walking into the wardrobe room, I saw the pictures on the wall, and any diehard Star Wars fan would know exactly what project it was. And initially, I thought it was a Boba Fett movie. And initially, they had 2 of 3 makeup or mask options for me, where they were just going to put on sort of almost like a Mandalorian style helmet, with the very thin visor, almost like a big blonde Viking braid, and also the same costume scheme from Joseph Porro, who was also nominated for an Emmy as well. Brian Sipe came upstairs and he said, look, we have 25 bounty hunters, but you were so patient. And because of the bald head, I want to do something a little extensive. I worked on a project 2 years prior for Greenpeace, and it was a model, it was a female model that was had the style of paint as well as prosthetics of a gecko. Not to throw any muscle around, but the original gecko model had 2 bumps on her head, So when I did the test for David and for John and for Deborah Chow, I did this fun reveal, like this Jedi reveal, because Gecko has this dark blue hood. And there were a couple snickers from some of the bounty hunters. And I go over to them, I said, what's going on? What's fun? They said, have you ever seen Little Nicky? And I said, oh my God, say no more. So it looked like I had 2 boobs on my head. So I said, I go to Brian. I said, look, I'm not trying to make any waves. I said, I have no ego whatsoever. I said, but if you can. I said, I'm 6'4", 260 pounds. I said, I honestly think the Star Wars fan base is going to love this character, especially, I'm kind of built like a guy's guy. I said, if you can make him, I was even suggesting sort of Zabrak. I said, but there's any way you can do anything with this. And that's how Gecko turned into the 4 horns of the prosthetic. Brian was so kind that he took the advice. Otherwise, I might have been in hiding as far as saying that I was Gecko. Would have been completely reversed the whole time. I would have ended up as a Star Wars meme the rest of my life, getting bullied. So it was great the way that it turned out. Of course, we still get, you still get somebody like, God, he looks like Stinkor, or he looks like, he's got udders on the head. But for me, I think it's pretty badass. And again, all the compliments to Brian Sight, as well as Joseph Porro, for creating a very elaborate costume. The first day, if I can add, they weren't good. They misplaced the mask. And for me, Star Wars for me is all about layers. It wasn't about being selfish with my own facial screen time. And I told them I was the last one to get into the cantina. It was the beginning of episode 1 of season 1. And I just said, if you can please find that, I said, I really want to add the layers to him, God willing. And hopefully, if it becomes a figure, or if he, becomes iconic in one way or another, I'd like to have those layers as opposed to just a plain face with the bumps. And I thought really the mask really made it within that character there. So.
You definitely are a tall fella. I met you for the first time in LA, and I'm vertically challenged anyway, but it was.
it hurts and helps. I've had my heart broken a few times. Tom Cruise, Michael Chiklis, Christian Slater, I've nailed the audition, and they said, that was amazing. Please slate your height. Please let us know what your height is. But in other times, it works in my favor with Bright, as a bounty hunter. Also, there was a major guest star on The District opposite Craig T. Nelson years ago, to where the way they found out who the killer was by the seat being pushed back so far. So sometimes it helps, but sometimes with the petite actors, and again, we all need to work. It just is what it is. But you just roll with the punches here in Hollywood and take what you can get.
That's an awesome story. And I mean, it rolls right into the next question, which is, at the Bounty Hunters Guild, we're working on trying to find a model that's wanting to build your character so we can build a costume reference list, or a CRL as we call it. Yeah. And I know in a lot of the opportunities we've had to talk in some of our past conversations, you've mentioned where some of the parts came from on your costume, which, we say in the costuming world, those are found parts. Can you tell us a little bit about those found parts?
Yeah, so about a year ago, somebody sent me a picture, and it actually adds to a really interesting backstory with Gecko. The Pike Sentinels from Solo, the exact same gauntlets are Gecko's. So I think that not only adds to a really cool story, but also at the same time, a much more accurate photo for the 501st to go off of. I've been as detailed as possible. I haven't reached out to Joseph Porro in regards to the mask, etc. I mean, the great thing is now is that the 3D printer is our friend. I have a couple of people, also really, a fun announcement later in December. We're thinking about personally doing the cosplay myself, or maybe if somebody doesn't come up with the CRL, perhaps the accurate or as close to accurate depiction I can give next year for an appearance. I would love to give that to you guys. The blaster was also analyzed, and it was a paintball canister in the back. And I think, I don't know if it was called an AR 300 or what have you. But again, I've been just as communicative as possible with all the members who are interested in creating that CRL, and here for you guys every way that I can. But ultimately, I'd like to reach out to Joseph just to see if we can get a little bit more detail. At the moment, I do have somebody measuring my head so I can work on that foam prosthetic to be able to get that down, because that's going to be obviously the most elaborate part. And I know some of you guys just do a whole full mask. But ideally, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it the way it was done accurately in terms of just getting the foam piece and then getting the spray on the face there.
Awesome. And, you know, you wouldn't be the only actor that is an actual member, not just an honorary member of the Legion. And man, we'd love to have you. So
thank you so much. I would be honored. And some very good news to come. Hopefully more good news to come shortly there.
So continuing along the lines of the Mandalorian conversation here, do you have a favorite memory from being on set?
There were a couple, and it was something to where, again, being selfless, where I wish that I could bring every fan, every 501st member into my heart and my eyes. And if you were a Jedi fan, a Sith fan, or a Bounty Hunter fan, I hope that Dave or John can bless everyone with this opportunity, even, you know, with secondary scenes, etc. But I got to pick my own blaster. And I said, for me, just being a diehard Star Wars fan, it was so funny. And I tell this story often on some podcasts. I don't know if you remember Big with Tom Hanks. And, you know, it broke my heart because I said, man, I wish every 501st or Mandalorian Merc, you know, the members would have been there to appreciate this with me. Because sometimes, you know, with the actors, if you remember with Tom Hanks and John Lovitz gets this $160 check, right? And it's just another day at the office, you know, it's just like, whatever. And Tom Hanks is freaking out at this check. He's like, oh my God, $160. What am I gonna, you know, where am I gonna go with it? So it's the same thing with me, where like, you know, everybody else is just like, all right, let me pick up my prop. And for me, I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? I'm picking up my own weapon for Star Wars, you know? Remembering when I was a kid, I was 6 years old. The coolest thing ever was putting in the big blasters in your, you know, in the figures and posing them. Remember Dengar and IG-88, I think they were pretty extensive in their weapons. So for me, especially thinking ahead, and knowing that, you know, Brian, I felt, I mean, to be honest, I thought out of the 25 bounty hunters, he did the most work on my character. I wanted to do the whole full kit for the potential of him being a really unique, rare figure someday. So I picked the biggest. It was not fun because we had to keep it on us all times, obviously for safety and also to, you know, be responsible of it, where I could have just easily picked the sidearm, which a lot of the bounty hunters did do during that standoff. But for me, I went all in on the Star Wars. That was my favorite moment. Seeing, again, there were a few, seeing George Lucas chatted up with Jon Favreau on I believe it was George Lucas. It might have been Favreau's birthday. I think it was Favreau's birthday during the first week of filming. And to talk about overhearing the history of the Mandalorians, I had no idea because I wasn't so much into the stories at that time, you know, and even Clone Wars, not that much. It's more of just the prequels and, of course, the original trilogy, which, you know, we've watched a gazillion times. So that was really magical, but also just the overall energy of this set. You know, if you go back to the 90s and 80s, I mean, you know, even before a lot of times, you know, I mean, I don't want to necessarily say the Me Too movement, but there was an energy on set with major films where there was a lot of yelling and say screaming in the 90s and 80s. Yet it was just such a beautiful energy, and I attribute that to Favreau, Filoni, and also Deborah Chow. It was like if you were on a Navy ship, you would want to be commanded under them. So for me, being on so many different sets and seeing sometimes Helter Skelter, I don't want to mention a few shows, it was just such a beautiful feeling, and knowing that even the crew were fans and knew that they were being part of something special. And when you saw the story flow, because a lot of times, sometimes the conflict on sets is also when the story doesn't flow, you knew why the leaders in charge had such an organic flow to the whole 10-day experience there.
Awesome. Hey, you talked about big weapons. It's funny. My daughter, when she was 18 and she had her first kit to get approved, and it was a Shadow TK, and she had a choice between an E11 or a DLT-19, and she says, "Go big or go home, Mom." Absolutely.
My favorite, actually, I mean, I heard it's a mint, but those Death Troopers were so gorgeous, especially being tall. I got to lose a little in the waist, you know, for me personally, but I would love to maybe get one of those at some point. You know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, this last year has been really rough on everyone. And, you know, rather than quarantine, you hit the road, 20,000-mile tour, crisscrossing the country, visiting comic book shops, doing autograph events. You were able to raise over $25,000 for small businesses and $4,000 for multiple charities that help children. And, you know, that's amazing. And, you know, we're all hats off to you on that. And, how does your family feel about the extensive time away from home that you do to do such a wonderful thing?
Oh man, it's funny. I was asked this before, and I said, "God, if anyone's married 20 years, you know the answer." It's like, there you go. There you go. If anything, I was starting a whole little routine where people are like, "Hey, I don't even care if you're an actor. Go out, maybe tour all the 7-Elevens. Get the hell out of my face." It was, obviously I was away from the wife, but also at the same time, this priceless experience with my younger son, Bennett. And now this time will be with my older son, Dante, and specifically all of the extra proceeds aside from the 15% to the store. I can't tell you how proud I am as a dad. He's 15, he'll be 16 next month. And he's a straight A student at one of the most accredited high schools in Los Angeles. And this ultimately is for him. Again, we go back to the quotes and also all the lessons from the original trilogy and also from the Clone Wars in regards to what, Filoni is teaching and Lucasfilm is teaching in regards to believing in yourself and taking on leadership in a positive way. I can't tell you how proud I am to have had this opportunity. And at the same time, I think, if you go back to some, and this is from an actor standpoint, with Steven Guttenberg, who was one of the highest grossing men of all time in the 80s and 90s. He would just knock on the door at Paramount, and sooner or later, he got that opportunity. And it wasn't looked down upon because ultimately, I think it's the same urge and the need that we all want is to be successful and also to take pride. The one thing I think that's very unique with Gecko is that I think the parallels to him is maybe the guy in the mailroom, the busboy. We can even go as humbling as McDonald's, to where you may not be a major part of the corporation, but at the same time, you take a tremendous amount of pride in being part of that company. And you also want to show those who are in charge what the potential can be. And not only through your enthusiasm, but also through your talent. And also, let's face it, at the same time, some of the opportunities through which is a major part of Lucasfilm, some of the merchandise. But we do it in the most positive way, in a way of showing them for also their benefit. But also at the same time, they came out with that report and we all got it, where some businesses are essential and some businesses are non-essential. And my belief is just the backbone of this country is any mom and pop who are getting up and getting it done themselves in this country. It's a belief that I've sort of relied upon for 25 years of my career, and that you cannot make excuses. You have to go out there and you have to show the world. The one thing also in terms of the lessons with Filoni and with Lucasfilm is that Gecko is his own unique species. He's his own unique character. And especially with kids, we talk about anti-bullying. I was starting to give speeches to schools before COVID started in terms of having that confidence. Sometimes you end up having to do it alone in terms of believing in yourself. And I hope that the main ironic point, because again, it's such a small character, but something that could be so powerful to some of these children who say, oh, wow, look at this person, going out there, maybe being the first one on the dance floor, or going up to a girl or going up to a guy and having that confidence because you believe in yourself and you believe in all the positivity that you want to contribute to something that you love so much. But I'm so grateful I was able to be a small ambassador for that. Again, it is contagious and it's something that I wanted to do. We had some people over at Marvel who were dying to get the character into the storyline. So the fans who I created such a solid fan base said, well, what about a fan fiction comic to where it's not the comic itself you're selling, but if you want to sell your autograph and at the same time support the stores, promote the brand, and also work with all the charitable organizations. And I said, sign me up in 2 seconds. This has been amazing. We are sacrificing the businesses back now, and I've been fortunate enough to work on television. I just finished my last show with Netflix on my block, so my agents are giving me this little window of time to do this. And I'm happy to announce that a little bit later this year, there will be a little bit of a cup on this in terms of all of our hard work. I feel has paid off, and I think it'll be a beautiful symbol and also a compliment not only to all the charitable organizations, but also to the fan base in terms of making history in regards to what I think we've achieved through these last 2 years.
That's awesome. I'm sure everybody's excited to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speaking of the fan base, Dom, you're incredibly popular within the Star Wars fan base for your accessibility. I've witnessed firsthand the difference you've made in lifting a sick child's spirits, as well as the time you spend interacting with the fans. With your busy schedule, what drives you and gives you the energy to continue to do all of this?
For me, indirectly, it is a thank you to Disney. It's a thank you to Dave and John for this opportunity. I think we always say when we buy that lotto ticket, and again, I mean, this to me, I think is a version of the Star Wars lottery, and knowing how many people would love to be a part of this franchise. What would you do if you got that $1 million ticket? And you've got some people who say, oh, well, I'm not calling it. I'm cutting off my phone and I'll see you guys later. And for me, I'm one of those. And I think many of you are like that, especially within the 501st and all the charitable organizations where you say, I'm going to try and help as many people as I can. 6 years ago, I just, the people in my life, I learned something that was very substantial. The greatest wealth in life is love. And as much as, I would love to get a beautiful Dodge Charger in the garage, at the same time, I've been fortunate enough to be around wealthy people. And there's an equation for why there's so many therapists in Beverly Hills. It doesn't mean anything. And I think you guys understand that when you walk out of a hospital, you understand that when you are in love with somebody and you truly give your heart to somebody that you care about, it's the greatest wealth of all. So as much as you think that I was, by sending free videos to everyone to sort of make them happy, I needed them just as much, and I still do in regards to filling my heart with the greatest wealth. And again, it's just goes back around to, out of respect to anyone who may not ever be in the franchise, to saying, well, it's great to see a performer that takes pride in his character, and also at the same time is using that opportunity of the smallest attention within the cast to do as much good as he possibly can. So for me, it's just, there's not even a question with it. The other thing is I don't even charge for selfies. There were families that were struggling. I remember there was a situation in Iowa, also even in Baltimore when I was with you, Jesse, to where some of these kids, they can't even afford an autograph or what have you. And for me, it's like, I can't do enough as a way of saying thank you for this opportunity. It's almost a Disney tale in itself, to where a witch comes to you and says, hey, look, I'm going to give you this small opportunity, but it will not exist without the help of others as well. And it's sort of a yin and a yang. I have Gecko proudly on one shoulder, and at one time, I want to have a symbol of our community as well. Because again, this opportunity would, being in the business for 25 years, would never exist with a side character in any other franchise. So I'm forever grateful.
Awesome. And this is the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm. What impact did the Star Wars universe have on your childhood, and where do you think you'd be if Lucas listened to all the naysayers all those years ago?
Oh man, it's funny because I think even Alec Guinness at the time, I think it was viewed sci-fi, the whole genre was viewed as a B movie. But when you see the attention to detail, the one thing I always love, it's so funny, I was just watching a YouTube thing where they were criticizing Walrus Man for not the figure for not being accurate to the show, to the movie, episode 4. And for me, as a 5-year-old playing with that Cantina playset, I think the one thing that kids are attracted to are the colors. So I remember specifically Hammerhead. I hope that Filoni at some point does a nod to that turquoise bikini. And then just corny as hell, have Hammerhead like walk. I don't know what that, but
I still have that one.
Yeah, but it's, I think the colors and also the music of John Williams that pulled us in as kids. But it literally was above and beyond any other sci-fi piece at that time, not to mention the limited content, to where Lucas, just everyone was down here. I mean, he literally was up here. And how amazing it is to sit in a theater in 1980, Yonkers, New York, a packed theater, and watch Empire Strikes Back, one of the greatest films of all time, not only through all the inspiration, do or do not, also the other thing that connected with me, and also with Lucas himself. I mean, we understand now that that was sort of a relationship with his father. Don't be an actor. Don't go into entertainment. To have that sort of connection and those parallels. Not only that, but also throughout the storyline now between brother and brother, in my opinion, as far as with Anakin and Obi-Wan. You have it between, say, mother and daughter, etc. And not to mention all the amazing mythology that inspires us every single day. It's just priceless. I mean, they're just almost, sometimes I scratch my head on how 40, 50 years later, people are still reciting little parts of Star Wars, because it's just been so inspirational to so many. As far as with the naysayers, etc., I don't know if you were necessarily relating to toxic fandom, but for me, sometimes what I do, because I'll hear it at some of the appearances, is I appreciate their passion. Though sometimes, with the sports team, I don't automatically take it as sort of a negative against the franchise, but sometimes with our beloved Cubs or our Mets or our Giants, et cetera, sometimes you might be angry at one thing or the other, but at the same time, it's anger because you love the franchise so much and it means so much to you. So I've sort of taken people's criticism with a grain of salt in terms of any of the toxic fandom. But as far as those naysayers back then, boy, I'd be pretty embarrassed if I was a critic and I panned it during the first week there. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don, we have just one more question for you. And
yes.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time out and doing this with us.
Please.
Excuse me. If folks are interested in seeing you in other roles outside of Star Wars, could you share some of your favorite movies that you were involved with?
Sure, absolutely. One that actually would hit the sci-fi crowd in a powerful way actually was with Brent Spiner and Doug Jones and Will Kemp, who again is a friend. He played Wolfman and Van Helsing. I did a film called Midnight Man, and that's on Amazon. And it was just a tame, a $2 million budget, but it was a really fun sort of action piece. And I was proud to have been a part of that. I also starred in a film called Anonymous Killers. The one thing I love about this film, the director served 18 years in prison for a minor crime in New York. But right now, obviously, we have a tremendous amount of social issues in our country. The one thing I love about this director, the one thing I love about this story is that he presents it in sort of a subjective way to where the audience can sort of look at it in a way of saying, hey, I don't necessarily agree with why that criminal did what he did, but also at the same time, I can understand. So I'm starring in that film right now. It's doing very well on Amazon. We have another film I'll be starring in called Deceived. Right after this tour, I'll be going to Florida to film that. And oh boy, we've got On My Block, that'll be for Netflix. I recurred on Superstore and NBC. Some of my favorite guest stars were NYPD Blue. It was Prison Break, NCIS Los Angeles. I think I have a little bit of a search button on Amazon now. I think a few of the shows will come up. We have a few duds in there. Stay away from Megalodon. Michael Madsen, Jesus Christmas. I mean, he just was like, hey, maybe I won't show up for this job. But either way, I mean, even that one in particular, even with just a $50,000 budget, I gave 110% every single day. It's very campy, but please stay away if you can. But yeah, over 25 years of credits. And again, I hope for Gecko, to me, it's sort of a parallel where I don't want to let him go, because I think a lot of the 501st can relate to why you pick a certain character within the Star Wars universe. And for me, it was almost as if the bounty hunter found me, because there's so many parallels of the working actor to the bounty hunter, in that you have to find a way to survive. The entire business during COVID was completely shut down. So the one thing with me and Gecko is, he may have a rusty ship. It's not going to look like Queen Amidala's, but at the same time, he's going to find a way. So this ultimately is what I'm the most proud of. As far as future projects, also a very special announcement, I think, come December and January. And I just appreciate everyone's support throughout the tour this year. Again, I can't stress enough, it's genuinely for my son. And as much as I can give back to the community, I certainly will. You guys know, and anyone who's listening as well, just say the word and we got a video, or we've got X amount of pictures signed to help your cause.
Well, and Dominic, if anybody wants to find you on your next crisscross tour, is there a link or something they can go to, or?
Sure. Yeah. Lair of the Gecko I have on Facebook. It's a Facebook page called Lair of the Gecko. On Instagram, it's Dominic Pace 1. And then on Twitter, it's Gecko the Hunter. But the other thing is, with the Star Wars community, I don't have 5,000 friends on Facebook. So feel free to add me. I reply to a lot of the messages there as well, and just appreciate everyone's support through this journey. Well,
and thanks again for joining us. Again, great event to raise awareness and funds for FIRST Robotics. Happy birthday, Lucasfilm. Thanks, Jesse.
No,
thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thanks,
Absolutely.
Mom. Safe travels.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And I'm Dino, TK82774.
And we are your hosts for this segment of 1138, celebrating 50 years of Lucasfilm. And joining us is Lee Towersy, an R2 Builders Club member with a true Star Wars style Cinderella story. So welcome to our program, Lee.
Hi guys, how you doing? Okay? Doing all right?
Yeah.
Good.
Doing good. Thanks for seeing us. It must be the time difference is a little crazy, so thanks for making time for us.
That's okay. Yeah, it's the evening here in the UK and summer has started. So we've had summer today as well in the UK. So it's been a lovely day and
nice.
I'm just cooling down now. So yeah, it's all good.
I'm glad to hear that. I want to start off with a question about just like, what was your life before Star Wars, right? So how did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And how did you get all these skills that you now employ in a lot of the droid building that you do?
Okay, so, well, schooling was pretty straightforward for me because I always lived locally to where I am still living now. And I went to my primary school in a small sleepy village called Laleham. And then I went to my secondary school and that was in Shepperton, funny enough, near Shepperton Studios. And that was great years. I really enjoyed schooling and I wasn't the best. I didn't come out with many great passes, to be honest with you, in qualifications. But, you know, I really enjoyed school. I worked fairly hard, but I knew I wanted to use some skill. And at the time, computers was coming in. So I went to college to study computers for a year in Weybridge, which is not far from Shepperton. And unfortunately, I failed because I'm not the best at exams, as you're probably finding out already. But I managed to get a computer job looking after the IT system within a steel stock holding company. And I was there for 23 years.
Wow.
And over that period of time, during my schooling and while I was working for the steel stock holding company, I was always into making things. So from like Lego, there's a Lego R2 here, of course, through to, you know, I was into remote control cars, boats and planes, which I always built myself. I didn't buy the, you know, ready-made cars. I was always looking for the kits to make and then drive them around. And I used to actually have more fun the actual making than I did the actual using the, you know, the remote control thing when I'd finished it, especially planes, because I had a good habit of crashing them. So the build took a year and then it took seconds to destroy it. So that was a short-lived hobby, that was. But yeah, so I've always been into making things and, you know, that was definitely my passion. And my mum and dad always said, you should get a job building things. You know, you need to use your hands. You're quite skilled with your hands. Why don't you try and look for that? So IT was good to me for 23 years, but I was made redundant at the perfect time because that's when Star Wars came along.
Gotcha.
So you joined the R2 Builders Club in 2007, was
That's
it?
correct. Yep.
So you were like a complete beginner to the astromech building hobby.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. As I see your two droids here as well. So
yeah,
you'll know all about the wonderful clubs that there is out there, you know, astromech.net. It used to be a Yahoo group in my time, and it moved over to astromech.net eventually, which is still running to this day, which is a wonderful source of information and parts and assistance from builders and so on. And yeah, so that's where it all started for me, looking for something new, remote control to build. I've done the cars and the boats and the planes, and I found the R2 Builders Club. So yeah.
And about how long did it take you to build your first droid after you joined the club?
2 years. So yeah, I was looking Christmas 2007. I found the club and I finished in 2009. So yeah, it was a 2-year build.
Lee, I'm pretty new to all this. I'm probably like 3 years in, and so I'm sort of like in that position where there's so much information already. Whether I wanted to build, you know, a center frame wood one, or if I wanted to go aluminum, the information was all there. What was it like in 2007 and the times when it was like so early and there was just so much research still going on?
Yeah, I was fortunate. It was pretty good then as well. We had the options of the styrene builds and the wooden frames and so on, and the aluminium parts as well. But back then we used to have to wait for parts a lot longer. So now we're sort of, I find that some of the builders are a little bit impatient. You want everything yesterday. You know, you suddenly need some legs and you decide which way you're going to go, because it depends what your skills, where your skills lie. Some people are happy to make their droids out of styrene. And that can be laser cut, ready made for you to just assemble, or you can cut them by hand. Then you've got wood, of course, and also you've got aluminium. And usually the aluminium builds, the part runs on the forum are usually manufactured by somebody else who make these batches of laser cut skins or legs and so on. But they only come now and again. For example, aluminium domes. I know there's a shortage of domes at the moment, and people are anxiously waiting for Cole and the guys to do their 300 mil, hydroform dome, because there's none available at the moment. So you have to wait patiently, and you may be nearly there with your build, and you're just waiting for the dome to come along. And maybe your funds aren't in place as well. So you have to wait for when you can afford to buy these things. And then the run may come and go, and like, oh no, I've missed it. So in those days, in my time when I was building, the runs were few and far between. So some parts, it took me 2 years to build because I was waiting for parts for so long. So I could have probably done it in half the time. But it was a lot of it was waiting for parts. Now, however, thankfully, there are some people that are stocking a lot of parts. They have to finance it themselves. There's no taking the money in advance. Like in my day, you had to pay up front and still wait a year for your parts to arrive. That was frustrating, which no longer happens. When you pay for your parts, they're in stock.
I know we snagged another aluminum dome. We hadn't really planned on making
Good. I'm trying to start off a C3PO, but we'll see what happens to that. Yeah.
Good companion. That's makes sense. But it's bizarre because, what an achievement that you two have built astromechs, amazing. They look stunning. But we then go and build more. What's that about? I don't know many builders that just build one astromech, which causes so much heartache and, money, expense as well, of course. It can be expensive. And they then go down that hole and build more. So it's amazing. Amazing.
I was talking to a friend, Todd, and he's saying that because he hasn't stopped, he keeps on making. And it's because I'm realizing this for myself too. The fun is in the building. And when you're done, you're like, oh gosh, I'm done. So it's like I still try to find what can I sneak in there and what can I do in there.
Exactly.
But definitely I know that feeling. Like there's a pang for like more. Like once you're done, you're like, well, what's next?
Definitely. But the thing is, obviously we're coming through lockdown now, hopefully, and we're going to be getting to more Comic Cons. Then it gets good again. Once you can start taking your astromech to events and you see the reaction from people, and they are blown away, where did you buy this? No, we didn't buy it. We built it ourselves. And like people are like, what? So then that's a even bigger payback, I always think. And you do forget that from time to time, until you talk about it or go along to an event and like, yeah, this is why I build a droid. This is great. Yeah.
So like we had talked at the top, you sort of have a Cinderella story, as I call it. So why don't you tell us about how you went from being a hobby droid builder to being a Lucasfilm employee?
Indeed, yeah. So in 2009, when I finished my build, there was only a few R2-D2s in the UK, myself and Oliver Steeples being two of them. And apologies to anyone else if they did have an R2-D2, but I don't remember any other R2-D2s at that time. So whenever Lucasfilm needed any promotional work done here in the UK, they used to come to myself and Oliver. So we were on the radar pretty much, within a year or two. We were quite well known and we became the go-to guys for R2-D2. And we got to know Mary Franklin very well, who used to work at Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And an amazing woman, she's still got a soft spot for the fans. I know she has. And, she used to do so much for the fans. She was fan relations anyway, but she was so, proactive in getting the fans involved. And we ended up doing a TV advert, for a big electrical store here in the UK. And we got some really cool jobs. And eventually Oliver was at Celebration in Germany in 2013. And unfortunately, I wasn't there, but he cheekily went up to Kathleen Kennedy, who was also there, with the announcement that Disney were taking over and making new films. And he just, nonchalantly said, if you want astromechs being built for the films, surely we're the guys to come to, and he was generalizing the R2 builders in general. And with 3 months later, I think it was, the production team were around Oliver's house, making sure he's for real and seeing what he's about and seeing his workshop and his, again, collection of droids, because it wasn't just the one astromech he had. And because of our work together, he got me involved. Some of the UK builders were involved as well. We had a few meetings, and he let a few of the people on the committee know what was going on. And next thing, we were at Pinewood Studios, and it turned out to be an interview. And we were told at the end of one of the interviews that we'd got the job, not really knowing that we were going for a job. We guessed, we speculated when we were talking to the other R2 builders as well. We speculated that surely they're going to use us just as consultants, maybe, or wouldn't it be amazing if they wanted to hire our droids in and use our droids? That would be really cool. But no, they wanted to build them. So Oliver and I started in the workshop. When we were given the job, we had to wait quite a few weeks again. And I just thought, this is a joke, this can't be real. And then we got an email with a start date. We were welcomed by everyone in the workshop. We were in the creatures department, and we ended up being there for about 18 months, I think it was, building and puppeteering R2 on set. And we had our own workbenches and our own work area, and a team of people that were helping us as well in the mold shop and so on. And
Wow.
it still makes my hair stand on end when I tell the story myself, and that was 8 years ago now, coming up to 8 years now. I've been at Pinewood Studios.
That's amazing. I had a quick follow-up to that question. So obviously a lot of the art droid work that you've done was of the remote control variety, being that that's the work that you've done coming into that. But obviously some of the droids that were puppeteered in the movies, some were run by people inside them, right? And so how did you adjust your understanding of droids, and what were the things that you learned through that process?
Yeah, interesting. So that came a bit later on for me, because Oliver and I worked on The Force Awakens. That was obviously our first film. And they continued to use the R2-D2s that we built all the way through to The Rise of Skywalker. So that was a job done, a line under that. And we used to just maintain them and look after them on The Force Awakens. And I continued to do so. But then we had to do a two-legged R2, which ended up, first off, was Jimmy V was in it for The Last Jedi. And it was all about weight. We were trying to keep the weight down for him. Luckily, Jimmy V was a little powerhouse. He was ever so strong, and he was really the only candidate we had that was suitable for the job because of his strength. But it was still aluminium, and it was really heavy. So from that, Oliver only stayed for The Force Awakens. He'd had enough of the industry, and it wasn't, he decided to go on back to his other job in IT. But I've stayed there, and I've done more droids since for people to perform in, and it's all about the weight. You really need to keep the weight down. And thankfully, part of the creatures department, we have a fabrication department where they make like the soft furnishings and the padding and so on. So if they've got some big suits, they get the padding they make in the fabrication department to bulk them out and so on, again, to keep the weight down. So with our droids, they make strapping and so on, and padding to make it comfortable in our droids. So hopefully we always make sure there's no screws sticking out, hopefully, to scratch them and what have you. But yeah, it's the main thing really, to answer your question, is weight. You've got to build droids as light as possible. So if you're using any aluminium, you're cutting loads of holes in the aluminium to make it so lightweight. These space-saving frameworks you make up. Foamex is pretty good. We've used Foamex in the past because that's quite nice, because it super glues together. Unfortunately, it does break quite easily as well, though. It does snap. So yeah, just the weight that's what it's about, really. And comfort, of course, for the performer, because they can be in it for a long time. So you do have to make it comfortable, and they usually are a bit heavy to be in for hours on end. So we usually make a supplementary stand or legs to drop out so they can take weight off themselves and put onto the droid and work, through the floor on a stand or something like that.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay. There was one droid actually that's a guy called Paul Shabester who came in on Solo, and he was in the model making department with me. And he did for The Rise of Skywalker, we called him Forky Boy. And it was this forklift thing. It was an orange thing that was quite heavy. And it took two of us to lift it onto the performer, nearly breaking our backs. But we used to look at each other and say, oh my God, this is so heavy. We never told the performer that. And he was on stilts as well.
Oh, wow.
So that was Tom Wilson that was in that. And you hardly see it in the film. He was in it for ages. but it's just a split second you get to see it for. So you have to accept some disappointment sometimes for the the days it takes to build these things. But that was all Paul's work to make that. But it was me and Paul, lifting it on because of the weight and so on. And and as soon as we cut, we used to rush in and lift it off if we could, or at least take the weight. And we were in costume actually on set that day we shot, because we had to be very nearby just in case there's any problems. So and behind the scenes, I think in The Rise of Skywalker, you can see Paul and I. You wouldn't recognize me because I haven't got my glasses on. I've got a cap on and I'm in full costume. But Paul and I are chatting to Tom with his Forky Boy, as we call it. I can't remember the real name now, but yeah.
Wait. I know we have a lineup of questions, but real quick, does that mean we could possibly have a Lee Towersy action figure in the future?
No, definitely not. That would be the dream, wouldn't it be cool? But I think people have had enough of me, to be honest with you. The last thing they need is an action figure as well. But I actually, if you're seen on camera and featured quite highly, you have to go to photography and scanning. So then they have got a log and a register of you for the encyclopedias and possibly for the toys. But we never made it even to photography or anything. So we knew categorically there's not going to be a toy. So yeah.
I had to ask.
So speaking about being on set, obviously not only did you build the droids for the films, but obviously you're also the operator for them as well. And I hear that you had sort of a very awkward spot during the heart-to-heart that Luke had with R2 in The Last Jedi. Did you want to talk about that scene a little bit?
Yes. So I've learned more as time goes on, but it's always best to check the shot and look at the monitors and see where the cameras are aiming when you're doing a shot. And I just got into the habit of standing by a lamp or something like that, because if you're standing by a lamp, that's not going to be in shot. If it's, if it's one of the film crew's items, or just stand by a fellow crew member, you're safe, you're out of shot. And during the scene where R2 rolls across the Falcon to see Mark and try and, talk him into helping out, he goes into a two-legged mode, which was Jimmy V inside. And I still puppeteer the dome. I've got the dome on remote control because Jimmy V's got his hands in handles ready to rock to help him with the weight of R2. So I was performing the dome. I had to do an eye line. So he had to rotate the dome for the holographic message from Princess Leia to repeat that. And to help me with the eye line, I lay on the floor. So I was laying on the floor between Mark Hamill and R2-D2 for the scene. It was quite awkward, but Mark was happy. I had to make sure I just didn't touch him at any time, and put him off and put him off his lines or what have you. But that was quite surreal. And when we shot that scene at the time, I thought this is amazing, and it was when it was shot actually before we lost Carrie. So, it was quite a poignant moment, even more so when the film came out, because by then we had sadly lost Carrie. And we'd shot that already. It was thankfully always going to be in the film, but it was still a nice nod and to see that kept in the film. And it was a special moment for me. One of my favorite scenes with R2, that is for sure.
Did you have any other memorable moments from any of the other films?
So there's lots of great stories, and most of them involve R2, to be honest with you, being such an iconic character. And there's a lot of Star Wars fans on set anyway. A lot of them have written to George Lucas when they were kids and, are fanboying out when they go on the Falcon and what have you. And when R2 rolls onto set, you just see everybody melt. They're still on an amazing set. We may be on a rebel base at Greenham Common with X-Wings around us and stuff like that. But then R2 rolls out and people are like, oh my God, we are in Star Wars. This is R2-D2. So, that's quite a proud moment. That always is quite magic. And I've had to drive R2 up and down the ramp of the Falcon as well, which neither shot was seen, unfortunately. So they were quite iconic scenes which we shot, which sadly weren't seen, and quite tricky. The one up the ramp I had to do at an angle, and as you guys may know, with your eye lines on R2, if you're straight onto him, then it's quite nice. If he's coming towards you, it gets a bit trickier because your controls reverse. But then if he's going away from you and you're sideways on, and you've got to fit in through a gap, you've only got an inch either side on the Millennium Falcon ramp for R2's foot width.
Oh wow!
So it's really tight. But thankfully, I hit it every time. I hit the mark, and I managed to get up the ramp we had a stunt crew at the top of the ramp, because the internal of the Falcon, when it's the external shot of the Falcon, the internal is just scaffolding. That's all it is.
Oh.
There's no interior. It's just a scaffolding framework. So we had a stunt guy roped up at the top of the ramp that was catching R2 when he was out of shot and hanging on to him. And then as soon as they shouted cut, I had to run up the ramp and just take it off the guy and, you know, just reverse it carefully down. And Anthony Daniels was on set and he seeked me out. He came and found me and was about halfway through the take. So we did about 6 takes. So by about the 3rd take, he came and found me and complimented me on my driving, which was nice. But that was all to do with the motors as well, really. You know, the prequel guys and you know, the other films, they had trouble, but it was the antiquated electronics. The way electronics and motors have improved over the years, that was partly helpful to it. You know, Matt Denton and Josh Lee of BB-8 fame, they helped with the motors on R2. So yeah, that was quite a magic moment. And actually, Neil Scanlon, my boss from the creatures department, he was sitting next to me while I did the shot as well. So he was making me nervous as it is. But then once Anthony came over, that was like, thanks for that, Anthony. That really does help. So yeah, good old Anthony. And then actually for the Rise of Skywalker, we had R2 coming down the ramp. You only see him at the bottom of the ramp, but he actually was driven down the ramp. But it's at such a steep incline, you've got no control over R2 at all.
Yeah.
So thankfully, the special effects guys, they set up a rig that bolted to R2's feet, and it had a track down the ramp on a rope. And then, again, I was doing the remote controls just to try and slow it down a bit and do the head movement. Yeah. But there was a guy literally hanging onto a rope, gradually feeding him down the ramp. So that was quite fun as well. And we had Yornus up there as well as Chewie, because he came down the ramp with R2, and he was messing about with R2 between every take. And at one point he knocked off the holoprojector.
Oh no!
The top holoprojector, and I'm like, Yornus, you've broken it. Don't touch R2. He's always up to mischief, Yornus is, you know, as you would expect from Chewie, I guess, you know. And sure. So that was a quick fix moment, but yeah, that was good fun.
You mentioned how Neil Scanlon's your boss in the creature department. I was curious if you had got sort of pulled over to anyone else's workbench and asked to help with any non-droid things, and if you thought that was, you know, a unique experience.
Yeah, funny enough, on Andor, I'm working on Andor at the moment.
Okay.
And the vehicles department, funny enough, asked me to help them recently, and they just had I'm not going to give anything away here, I don't think. So no spoilers here, guys. Don't worry. It was just a gun on a turret, but it was just like an R2D2 dome, just rotating on this gun turret. And we're quite, because it's TV, it's not as there's not as much money available and not as big a crew. So they were like, who could we get? So they got in touch with Neil Scanlon, the vehicles department did, and just said, do you know anyone? So that sounds like an R2D2 type of thing. Let's get Lee over there. So yeah, I just set up the radio gear, and they've got these 2 vehicles with gun turrets on them that I set up a remote control for. Anything else?
You heard it here first. There will be a gun turret in Andor.
There you go. Yeah, wow, big spoiler there, guys. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I've got to know all the other departments very well. You know, it's a very friendly set to be on. Costume, actually, some of the costume guys, because we get involved with them, because some of our droids may have costume parts to it as well. So we get to know those guys, but I've never actually made anything for costume. But yeah, that's it that I can think of. Yeah.
Are there obviously you've worked with lots of other droids other than an R2 in the movies. Are there any favorite moments regarding the other droids you worked on, maybe the ones in Solo and whatnot?
Yeah, definitely Solo. So Solo was great fun. We made probably the most droids for that. I think we made close to 100 droids in less than a year. Some were duplication, so we're cheating a little bit here, and we brought mouse droids back, and we got 3 mouse droids. So we soon get crunched through those numbers, you know. But there was a lot of droids, and there's only ever 4 of us in the workshop in the model making team. So you know, it was quite a small crew, and that's when Paul Shabester started, who's still working in the model shop now. Keep mentioning him, but he is a genius that people will get to know sooner or later, I'm sure. He's an amazing talent, a young guy. And then there was Waldo. A guy called Greg, So yeah, that was the main four, but we had some other people guesting in and out. We made so many droids. One of the moments was when L3 releases all the droids from the control room and is releasing all the restraining bolts. And it was absolute chaos because we had sparks going off. We had loads of droids on set. We actually set one droid on fire, a small mouse droid that was specially made for Silent. It wasn't the normal black mouse droids, but it was a different mouse droid that Paul Shabesta created, funny enough. We had these squibs going off. We had special effects guys had these paintball guns with these, I forgot what it's called now, zirconian balls or something. They exploded on impact. There was these little glass balls. So there was these paintball guns going off that they were shooting. And it was a closed set. It was a 360 set. And the camera was shooting down a doorway. And we weren't allowed on set because we would have been in shot. So we were hiding in the control panels. We were hiding behind the control panels. We were hiding behind the camera. And as the camera came back, we were having to run out of the tunnel, even though we were still trying to perform. It was absolute chaos. But it was one of the best few days on set because of how chaotic it was and the amount of people involved and the amount of puppeteers we had, you know, some of the iconic puppeteers that everybody will know. It was just such fun. Sadly, again, you know, a lot of it ended up on the cutting room floor. Actually, at one point, Warwick was in DB, I think it's called, the droid is. And this is one of the droids that we made that he had to wear. And we all had to escape down this corridor. And it came to a point where we were all out of sight. We couldn't see where the droids were. We were told cut. And Warwick, bless him, was pinned against the wall by a load of droids. And he had this little top hat thing on the droid, and the top hat had popped up as though someone had got a bean can and squeezed him, bless him. But Warwick just found it hilarious. You know, Warwick is is such a laugh. You know, he's going for a laugh all the time, and he took it. He wasn't hurt, luckily. You know, and he took it in good stead. But it was a good sign to the film crew that we actually need better visibility. You know, and maybe we're trying to overachieve a little bit here. So yeah, that's a memorable droid moment for sure.
That's awesome.
So not only are you R2's official caretaker, but I believe you also were in charge of a very special pink lady for The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to talk about that experience, about having.
Indeed. Yeah, such an honor. You know, JJ, fair play to him. I don't care what anybody says about JJ. His attention to detail and his knowledge of Star Wars is second to none. And as soon as he found out about R2 Katie, you know, he was like instantly, got to get her over here. You know, we need R2 Katie over here. So thankfully, in a way, he didn't ask Oliver and I to build one. He wanted to use R2 Katie, you know, because it was the one and only R2 Katie at the time, let's face it. And yeah, so Albin Johnson flew it over to the UK and we took care of it. It didn't need any work doing on it. It was well loved and maintained before it came to us. You know, they probably checked it over, I'm sure, before it came over. And we were at Greenham Common, an iconic missile base of all things over here in the UK that had been converted to the Rebel base. And Katie was taken there and can be seen driving around in the background. Unfortunately, not by me, because I was busy looking after other astromechs at the time, including my own personal astromech, because again, JJ was kind enough to allow the R2 builders to bring some of their droids in for filming. So we had a lot of astromechs on set, and we had a guy called Steve Wright, and he was one of the mechie guys in Creatures Department. He does the animatronic heads and so on, and he actually works on Yoda as well for Last Jedi, who we sadly lost. He sadly passed away, but yeah, he was such a great guy, and he was looking after Katie because I knew he was the, you know, if Steve was on set, you always knew you'd be all right. You know, he was always, if Steve Wright's here, we know we're going to be all right. And I gave him the controls for Katie, and he took care of her, and thankfully got her in shot as well. So it was such an honor to have Katie over here, and thanks to JJ finding out about Katie and, you know, wanting her over for sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that was very special.
Any advice for people starting out droid building? I know we started our conversation about that at the top of the conversation, but what can people expect out of the community? And maybe you can talk a little bit more about the Droid Builders Club and the community that we have.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Droid Builders, as I've already touched on, is such a wonderful community and has got such a great amount of information to hand for everyone. If you're thinking of building an R2 or any astromech, you know, for the first time, it may look a bit daunting. And I did spend weeks, maybe months researching, and there was limited information then. So probably I was trying to find the information because it was hard to get hold of. But now there's a hell of a lot of information out there, which again may seem a bit daunting because, you know, which one do I follow? You know, which way do I go? But it's one of the things you just got to decide is what materials you're comfortable working with. If you're quite handy with wood or plastic, styrene, or 3D printing now, which is another thing I didn't mention actually, which was a thing that wasn't even available when I was building because you can 3D print. Are yours 3D printed at all?
Mine is mostly wood, resin, metal, and some 3D printed greeblies wherever I have.
Okay, and what about you, Nikki? How have you built yours?
This one is older. It doesn't have any 3D printed parts. We did build an R6 dome to switch out with this dome, and that one is styrene with 3D printed greeblies.
Okay, so is that one mainly aluminum?
This is a aluminum dome, but a wood body with styrene skins.
Styrene skins. Okay, so the reason I ask, and my point is that whatever material you're comfortable working with, definitely go for that option, you know, because once you've done a good enough job with it and you've painted it, you cannot tell what it's made out of.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Do your research, spend ages researching and finding out, you know, and get to events if you can, because sometimes you just need to physically see how things go together, and get talking to builders. We're a friendly bunch, aren't we, guys? You know, we're a friendly bunch of people. And yeah, just do research and decide your way of building. And if you're not happy on actually manufacturing the parts yourself, or you haven't got access to 3D printer, then you can buy aluminum parts gradually and yeah, and assemble it yourself. You still need a bit of engineering knowledge because you can't buy a kit. Let's face it, you know, it's not a ready-made kit that you can just buy in its entirety. But if you get aluminium parts, in theory, and I'm pretty sure this is still the case, even if you're buying parts from different builders, they should all bolt together nicely. The fixing holes are in the same place, so they all come together nicely. And choose which design you go for. You know, we all want to build an R2D2, but equally, it's great to see a different color scheme. So whether it be your own color scheme or another iconic astromech, you know, make your choice on painting. But that can come later. You know, once you've finished it, you can have it completely unpainted. But yeah, talk to people, and there's so many groups out there as well. Astromech.net is a definite go-to. Here in the UK, we've got astromech.info, and we've also got now droidbuilders.uk, which is a more generic Star Wars droids, not just astromechs, but it just points you in the direction for anything you want to build. And then there's Michael Badley's 3D printing page on Facebook as well. I see you smiling there, Dino. What a group that is. You know, it's such a massive, I think 7,000 or 8,000 people, I think, is the last count I saw. And what a friendly bunch. You know, you do get some rubbish on Facebook at times, but you go onto that page and it's all, you know, it's all friendly and helpful. And there's other Facebook groups as well for astromech building. There is astromech, what is it? There's the R2 Builders Club, I think, on Facebook as well. There's plenty of groups to join. Again, it may seem a bit daunting joining all these clubs, but you'll see the same faces cropping up. Drop a question. Once you do a bit of research yourself first, but if you've got any questions, drop a question in any of those and someone will get back to you and be helpful, I'm sure.
That's awesome. Nikki, unless you have other stuff, I wanted to ask about future projects, and also if you want to talk a little bit about the 39.1% project that you've been working on as well.
Of course, yeah. Have you got any other questions, Nikki? First, no? Is it?
Whatever order you can go ahead with those ones.
Okay, so yeah, other projects, as I've already mentioned, I'm currently working on Andor. So I've been working on that a little while now. We started just before COVID. So we went on to lockdown. So that was all frozen and, you know, put on hold for a little while at Pinewood Studios. thankfully, we got going again in August last year with regular COVID testing, which we're still doing now. Masks are being worn all the time. You're wearing 2 masks when you're on set in front of the performers. Thankfully, the cases have been low and haven't stopped any filming or anything. So yeah, that's been an interesting experience, but still working on Andor at the moment. And yeah, it's all been about Star Wars for me, really. Since The Force Awakens, it was such an amazing experience. And when I talk to people that have been in the industry for 20, 25 years, asking what the best thing they've ever worked on, in a Rebel base, they're like, come on, you don't get better than this. And I was thinking, what would it be like to work on another production? Would I have the same passion and the same feeling for it, And I have dipped into other work and helped people out on other films, but funnily enough, I didn't really feel it. It didn't feel the same as Star Wars. So I'm being a bit picky. And as long as they keep asking me back to do Star Wars, I'll carry on doing it. So we're spreading the love as well, because I know some productions are being done over in the US, but I hopefully, productions will continue to happen in the UK as well. And as long as Neil Scanlon has me back, and as long as I'm enjoying it, I'll continue to work on Star Wars, hopefully.
It's awesome.
So then what was that 39.1%?
Oh yeah, so something else I've worked on actually, which I haven't mentioned yet, is the ALT droid. So it's a wonderful tank track droid, which we made for Rogue One, which you hardly see, but it's seen more in Solo, and they were shipped actually over to the US, and you can see them in the background for Mandalorian, the same ones that I made. And it's just such a fun build and a great thing to drive, because it's got these tank tracks, which one of my very good friends made, called Tim Berry. And it's an amazing tank drive system. It goes over pretty much anything. So it's not as top heavy as R2, it's nice. And the ALT is sort of abbreviation for all terrain, but also Pablo asked me for the name for, instead of an astromech, what can we call it? So I said, well, let's call them ALT droid, and the LT are my initials. So Pablo went with that, thankfully. So it's quite a nice honor. But then Tim was learning CAD, because it's quite important that, a CAD is a handy thing to have in your toolbox now, if you can, learn your 3D design and what have you. And Tim designed these mini versions of the track droid, which you see quite a few behind me.
Okay.
And yeah, we've got this little builders club, and it's a good learning project as well, actually. You were asking earlier on about what people should do if they're thinking of building an astromech. A simple build like a mouse droid, or maybe even one of these, it's a good place to start. And it teaches you, these are all 3D printed. So it teaches you basic painting skills and finishing skills, and plenty of sanding if you're 3D printing. I will warn people of that if you don't know already. And yeah, basic electronics. So if you don't, if you're building any droids, you're very lucky if you know everything. So you may be able to build it fine, but you think, how the hell am I going to make this thing move? Again, the club will help you with that. And it is actually quite easy once you've learned it. It's quite simple, although it may seem daunting. And again, these 39.1% droids, the ALT droids, they're a good learning curve really on teaching you basic electronics as well. 39.1% because Tim found some tracks that were readily available through Alibaba or somewhere like that, I think. And it meant he had to scale the droid down to 39.1% to make the tracks work. Okay. So that's why it's a 39.1% droid, and that's what Tim called it, the 39.1%ers. So okay. A fun little project. And the reason I've got so many is during lockdown, I've been printing these out for fun, because we're going to take them to events with a portable track, and we're going to encourage kids to race them. We've got a special lap counter and so on. So we're going to have competitions, fastest lap time and so on, and races throughout the day, hopefully to raise money for charity. We're going to suggest people maybe pay $1 or, a pound to have a go. And that's the plan. So yeah, just to encourage building really. And it's a good little fun project. And I know there's plenty of builders out there that have added that on their to-do list, that have got 3D printers and have made them. And the group, they post different types. We've got a Darth Maul one and what have you, a 3PO one, I think, and a Dalek one. So yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. And I've actually, my ones around me are mainly racing teams. I've done a Formula One theme to take to events. So I thought that'd be the fun thing to do. So yeah, a fun little project.
That's awesome.
I know that the droid races, ever since my kids started going to Celebration way back in Celebration 3 in Indianapolis, the droid races were their favorite thing.
Yeah, good fun.
So I know
Yeah.
that droid racing, the 39.1 percenters would be something
Yeah.
the kids are going to love.
Yeah, and the hope is that we have them at Celebration next year as well. We were going to have them at Celebration last year. We just sort of greenlit that, and then it was sadly cancelled. But yeah, so hopefully we'll have them again because they're quite portable as well. So people that are traveling can carry them on a plane, hopefully, and be part of the racing fun at Celebration next year.
Yeah, that's our one disappointment with our guy is we're on the East Coast of the US and Celebration's on the West Coast.
That sucks. Yeah.
So we did get to compete with the droid races at Celebration Chicago, though. That was kind of in the middle. So we were able to drive him out for that. So
right, good. That's good.
That's fun. So do you still have your original droids that you built when you first joined the club? I
do. Would you like to see them?
Yeah.
Sure.
So we might have to cut this because I'm going to have to turn the laptop around or maybe carry the laptop around with me. So bear with me. Also the microphone. Let me just. First of all, you probably saw the selection of domes I've got there. Nice. So the R2D2, that's my new R2D2 dome, which has the Markduino system in there. For those that don't know, that's with all the flaps opening and so on, and different functions and different sounds. So that's ready to go. So I'm going to I was going to try and get that on the droid for this interview actually, but sadly I didn't have time because I've been enjoying the weather too much. Yeah, there's various other domes there. That one there, the black one, that's C2B5, which is a black droid I designed for Rogue One. So because I did it for Rogue One, which is now property of Lucasfilm, I had to make my own version. So that's what I did. So you'll see the body in a minute. And then I'm just going to spin around. And
yeah.
There you go. So there's my droids. So we've got the Rollo, the black and white one. That was my first build. That was my first R2D2.
Oh.
And that's seen in a lot of the promotional shots for Force Awakens when we hadn't built the R2D2s yet, like High from the Workshop with JJ and Kathleen and Oliver and I. That was with my R2D2. And when they did the script read through, my R2D2 was in a crate in the background. And you can just about, and I've still got the crate actually, thankfully. So you can just see the crate to the side of Rollo. So Rollo lives here with me now. Because I repainted my R2 to become Rollo, I've then obviously, as you can see, made myself another R2D2, which is full aluminium. That's an entire aluminium build. And the dome on top is my first ever thing I built back in 2007. So the first thing I made, I had, because I was just finishing in the steel industry, I had a dome specially spun for me. And then I hand cut all the panels with a Dremel. So I drill the panels out and hand cut it myself. And then the droid you can see here, his body's backwards actually, but that is the ALT droid I mentioned earlier on. So that's the full scale version of the 39.1% droid. So he needs weathering, but yeah, so I've made that myself. And then let me see if I can just go to the back here. Let me show you're going to get this. So you can just about see there's C2B5 at the back.
Yep, there he is.
Without the dome, obviously, because that's on the shelf at the moment. That's just being finished off at the moment. So there you go. So there's my collection there. But I'll just go back to my bench now. So might have to cut again. So yeah, they live with me at home and can't wait to get them back out again at events, really.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to with my guy here. He's kind of been stuck in the house. He's never been in the house for this long. Normally, he's out every weekend, so we just leave him out in the van.
Yeah. A nice thing to have at home, though. Good talking point when you can have people around. You know, it's that's fun as well.
Yeah.
But then you have to make sure the battery's charged because people always want to see it working, don't they? Come on, let's see it working.
Any other questions for us, Nikki, on your end?
No, I think that was my last one. I wanted to see if you still had your original babies.
Great, good stuff.
Lee, is
Yeah.
there anything that we missed that you'd love to share to with people?
I don't think so. No, I think that was a good interview. I think we covered everything, and yeah, I think it was good.
All
I don't
right.
think people have fallen asleep. Too many people have fallen asleep during that one.
No, I don't. I doubt it. People are probably really as excited as we are. As you can see, we're big fans of you. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much. And again, I'm going to take this moment to encourage people to donate to the charity that we're supporting, which is FIRST, which does a lot of STEM programs, which includes robotics. And so please donate to the charity. Nikki, any other thoughts?
Yep, no, that was the big one is not only do we want to sort of inspire fellow droid builders, but that younger generation that's coming up through the FIRST robotics program, we want to make sure to support them too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important. I think, do what you enjoy, guys. I know it's easy for me to say when I'm doing a job, I feel the best job in the world, but you're a long time working. So if you can do something you enjoy, it makes life at work a whole lot easier. So yeah, please donate to STEM, to FIRST. Sorry, it's such a good cause. And yeah, I will be donating for sure. Definitely. So
Thank
yeah,
you so
please
much.
donate, guys. And thanks for having me.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
for
much.
joining me.
Yay!